Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning. You say good afternoon if you are in Eastern time zone on the East Coast. Good afternoon to you. I'm aware it's like midday, lunchtime, your time, or just about to have lunch. If you are Central Time, it's still morning for you. And if you're Pacific, to all my California-based people, it's still pretty much the start of a busy Monday morning for you. If that's the case, not a problem at all. You can definitely catch up on this particular LinkedIn Live / YouTube Live / X or Twitter Live video later on in your day. I don't usually go live, especially not on a Monday when it's pretty hectic and you just want to get straight into the work week. You're catching up on all those emails that have trickled through over the weekend, and the emails, those emails that you keep avoiding on Fridays. Yeah, those ones when you're logging off early, right? So I understand Monday is a really hectic day, but even more hectic than a Monday is the current stream of news that we're seeing over the past week. It's been just horrendous, to say the least. So much that's been happening in the world of work. And I thought I just had to jump on a LinkedIn Live, on a YouTube Live, on an X Live, and talk to you about this. I haven't given you much notice that I was going live. I just thought it was necessary because with the current climate, with the economy, with politics, with just the world of work that's rapidly evolving every day, it's something that leaders and managers and professionals at every level need to be keenly aware of. Before I continue, I just want to do a quick sound check. So I'm just you just never know how technology is these days. You can't really be too trusting of technology when it comes to making sure everything is in sync. So I'm just checking that I am live everywhere else. And yes, I am live. Okay, brilliant. Just double checking. All right, so today, I'm not going to keep you too long because I understand you're at lunch, but I want to, before we get into the live, just so you know what we're going to be covering, we're going to be talking about the latest developments in the world of work, things that directly and indirectly impact you as a leader, as a manager. We're going to be talking about SORA 2. We're going to be talking about the US government shutdown, and we're going to be talking about layoffs. SORA 2, you might be saying, well, why not AI? SORA 2 is the latest hot development in the AI world right now. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel, to my videos, you may not have seen me before, but you certainly have read me before. I'm all over the place on Forbes with over 63 million viewers in 2 years. I've been featured in Business Insider. I'm a LinkedIn top voice. So you've definitely come across my work in some way or another. And I'm Rachel Wells, I'm your host today, and I want to not just break down the news, but I'm more doing it from an actionable perspective angle. What can you do seeing what's happening in the world today, seeing what's happening within the US, within multiple industries, things that are having a ripple effect on multiple industries. What are the implications for managers and leaders today? That's what we're going to be talking about. And we're also going to be talking about what do you need as a leader? What do you need to do to arm yourself and to equip not just yourself, but also your teams for what's ahead and for what's happening right now? Okay, so I'm going to kick it off with the latest hot topic, which is AI. Okay, I mean, it's been a hot topic since like November 2022 when ChatGPT was launched. OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and OpenAI today has been literally the most used AI application, specifically generative AI application to date. Had millions of users, a sizable amount of the population. The US obviously comes number one when it comes to usage, followed by India when it comes to generative AI, followed by other countries, including the UK. Sadly, my little spot in the world, the UK was not number one on the list, as you can imagine. But yes, but that's what's been happening. And so that's nothing new. What's constantly being new is the pace at which AI is progressing, rapidly developing. Almost every day, it's like you can hardly go to the news or even just open up your Google feed or Google Discover feed without seeing a new AI startup that's been launched or a new maybe venture capital firm investing millions or billions into this idea, often backing founders or backing ideas that haven't had proper proof of concept yet, simply because they slapped the name AI on it, which is quite interesting to see. AI is in its own industrial revolution. We've often termed it the Great Fifth Industrial Revolution. This is another transformation from the dot-com era, from when computers and the internet first was born. This is like the next level, and it's set to shake industries. It's set to drastically, radically transform jobs. Completely, going from about 93 million jobs to 170 plus million jobs. Even though it's taken away jobs, it's adding more jobs to the economy. Job titles that we haven't even heard of as yet, job titles that are becoming new to us, like chief AI officer. What's that? AI consultant, different AI job titles that will appear and that are coming out now, even as we speak. And with these latest developments, I think it's really critical. I know it's very critical for us as leaders, business leaders and managers, working in operations, project management, whatever department you work in. It's really vital to stay abreast of these changes, because the moment you don't, you can just close your eyes for a few seconds and already the world is moving ahead of you. And I think this particular, someone in my LinkedIn network said it really aptly today. I forgot her name, but she said something to do with, you've got to be 10 steps ahead. You've got to upskill yourself and train your teams faster than the world is evolving. Now that technically sounds unfathomable, unbelievable. Like, how can you go faster than the world is evolving? That's the pace that's demanded right now. And what that means is really having a future-focused approach, having a long-term, not just a long-term vision for your organization, but actually thinking ahead, thinking about the risks that could lie ahead, thinking about ways to establish guardrails and to mitigate, thinking about the training needs, anticipating the training needs that will be required for yourself and for your teams. And Sora is definitely one of the biggest examples to date of why that is so needed. I was recently at Asana's Work Innovation Summit just a couple of weeks ago. And, I was interviewing the CEO, Dan Rogers. I also had a chat with Victoria Chin, who heads the AI product strategy. And I also had a chat with Saket, who is the Chief Information Officer. And in those interviews, which you can check back on my LinkedIn and see, one theme ran through those interviews and in the conference itself, in the summit itself. And that theme was, absolutely, this is not something that we can turn a blind eye on. As managers and leaders, it's our responsibility to not just upskill, but to think about integrating AI with strategy. Really not just trying new tools just for the sake of it, but really thinking about having a really strategic approach. And when it comes to Sora, yes, it's a shiny new tool. Sora has been around for a while, but Sora 2, yes, it's a hot topic right now. Yes, everyone is trying it and experimenting. There's a big craze about it right now. But let's not see it as a shiny new object. Let's look at it as, okay, going back to the interviews that I had, what are the pain points in our organization? What are the gaps that need to be filled? And how could an app like Sora potentially fill that gap, or is it even needed? So for those of you who are a little bit behind, Sora was released last week. Sora 2, should I say, was released last week. And for those of you who are a little bit behind, I want to bring you up to speed with the latest developments in the OpenAI ChatGPT realm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to play this video. This video is definitely breathtaking when you look at it and you realize just how far we've come with AI. And just to give you a bit of a preview, or a bit of not disclaimer, but yeah, a bit of a preview before I play the video. When we think about AI videos, we often think about limbs missing or faces that are slightly distorted, or, missing parts of the videos looking a little bit like obviously AI, maybe there's a finger that's been twisted or distorted or whatever, or the hand is extra big, you know what I mean? Those obviously AI videos. That's all changed. That's done away with this powerful next gen model. I'm going to show you the video, and then I definitely do welcome your thoughts on it. I'm going to share my thoughts on it as pertains to leaders and managers. And I also wrote about this in my Substack Work 2.0 newsletter on Friday. So if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, go ahead, go into my Substack Work 2.0 newsletter and have a read. But I'm going to share the video now. So just bear with me a second. Okay. All right, so here we go.
One year ago, Sora 1 redefined what was possible with moving images. Today, we're announcing the Sora app, powered by the all-new Sora 2. It's the most powerful imagination engine ever built. And it's packed with new features. I'll pass it to Bill for more details.
Now every video comes with sound.
Sora 2 is also the state-of-the-art for motion, physics IQ, and body mechanics, marking a giant leap forward in realism.
And we're introducing Cameo, giving you the power to step into any world or scene and letting your friends cast you in theirs.
On the path to AGI, the gains aren't just about productivity. It's about creating new possibilities.
It's also about creativity and joy. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's why we're launching Sora 2 inside the Sora app, allowing everyone to push the limits of their imagination and create in ways we never thought possible.
All right, that's it, folks. So I really would love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm just going to go back to my original screen. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. It's definitely hyper-realistic. It's more than anything we've ever seen before when it comes to the capabilities of AI video. And these are my thoughts on it. I'm actually going to read you an excerpt from what I wrote in my Work 2.0 Substack newsletter on Friday, because I found this not just fascinating from a creative angle, but really from a leadership angle. When you think about Sora 2 and how it's capable of creating these sophisticated background, soundscapes, speech, at a very, very high degree of realism. This is what is really important for you to know. I'm just going to be reading a little bit of an excerpt from my newsletter. I said, you can create high-grade quality video content without cameras, crews, or editing suites. So when you think about your marketing budget, or the things that you typically go to marketing for, you'll be working, the way you collaborate with your marketing team will shift. And if you're a marketing manager or a director or a leader in the marketing space, that whole dynamic will shift, because now instead of you thinking about having to shoot a video and reshoot a video how many times, instead of you having to think about this whole production budget, your budget is just focused on Sora's capabilities alone. And it's already accessible to ChatGPT Plus and Pro users in many markets. So, for example, some of the use cases as a manager or as a leader outside of marketing can involve things like internal comms and training. For example, if you're doing onboarding, say you need a quick explainer video, you can get Sora to generate visuals and narration much faster than you ever imagined. And it will actually take, like you see with the example of Sam Altman, which wasn't really Sam Altman, you can take your own visual likeness and put it into Sora and actually generate a video as if it was, which is hyper realistic, as if it was you and it's not even you. Now, obviously, there's a good side to this and a bad side to this. Right now, I'm dealing with the good side. And the good side is how it definitely cuts budget costs when it comes to marketing. It definitely helps when it comes to things like explainer videos and onboarding for new employees. I also think it's really good when it comes to doing a pilot. If you're trying to do a prototype of a video idea or a social snippet or a statement, like a visionary statement, you can do this and pilot it, or try and create a prototype, maybe to present as an idea to the marketing team. There's so much you can do with this from a leadership perspective. But again, another thing that you should bear in mind if you've worked directly in marketing is the guardrails of this and the risks of this. And one particular guardrail and risk that comes to mind is the deep fake nature of this. And deep fake has been around for a while. Now with AI, it's taken a whole new ethical meaning. And it's really important that when you're using Sora, obviously, you've got to think about permissions. You've got to think about the identities of people represented here. You've got to think about generating content that accurately reflects what that particular person and their identity would say. You're going to think about consents and those sorts of permission roles, and how will guardrails be effectively put in place, not just within your marketing department, but within your organization as a whole when it comes to the use of applications like this. And at the same time, I think there's a huge caution here when it comes to overuse of AI, when it comes to using too much AI for videos and for photos, because there you can risk a disconnect. You know, humans, we connect with humans, and if it ever comes out that you're using AI, or if it any way it's obvious that you're using AI to generate videos or photos, too much use of it can weaken trust in how genuine you are as a leader and how genuine your organization is. That you can create a disconnect between yourself and your target audience. That is something to bear in mind. Not to rely too heavily on AI video, but it is quite fun to use. It's quite not just fun to use, but as an assistant when it comes to cutting down costs, especially as far as marketing budgets are concerned. I can see this drastically transforming the economy for sure. And of course, we've got to think about the ethics when it comes to copyright and training data. Obviously, just like ChatGPT, just like other AI tools, it does pull from a huge database of existing content that's available online. So we've got to bear that in mind when it comes to ethics, when it comes to copyright, and how far do we want to delve into this. But definitely remember that this is not something that we can afford to avoid. Just like when ChatGPT came out and then it released several new versions, now we're at version 5. This version of Sora, like I said, it's unlike anything we've ever seen, and it's definitely set to drastically change the creative industry, but with an extension of that, drastically change just the way we operate in organizations when it comes to learning and development videos, when it comes to just internal comms, external comms, things of that nature. Okay, so that's just something for you to bear in mind. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, apart from Sora 2, is the current government shutdown. Now, I'm not going to divulge into politics here. That's not what this video is about. However, it's very critical that we bear in mind the ramifications of the US shutdown, federal shutdown, which apparently the longest federal shutdown lasted, I think it was just over a month. Okay, now we're hoping and praying it doesn't go that far. But even if you don't work in the government, there are ramifications that could potentially impact your industry. I wrote a Forbes story about this last week, Thursday. And I said in that Forbes story, you can check it out, I said that this is something that impacts and should concern leaders and managers, whether or not you work for the government. If you work for the government, even more so. But if you don't work for the government, there are certain industries that are being, or that will be very soon, impacted. It's like a dominoes effect from this US government shutdown. For example, tourism, hospitality, travel, industries or small businesses that thrive or profit off certain government contracts. If those government contracts are temporarily pulled, shut down because those employees are furloughed, there's no contact, therefore obviously those contracts start to wane, they start to disappear. You're not effectively able to manage those contracts. You don't have those key contacts in place because they're all furloughed. What about if you're an organization, if you're a business that provides supplies to a national park, for example? Okay, let's give an example. National parks are set to obviously definitely be affected by this government shutdown. Organizations like FEMA, organizations such as veterinary organizations within the federal government are definitely being affected here. So can you imagine if in any way you're a supplier, or if you are maybe somehow a partner with these government organizations, Definitely for suppliers, there's a huge concern here. If you're a manager or a leader working as a supplier, leading a teams on a contract, a federal contract, like, I know that that's very volatile. I have led federal contracts, not in the US, but in the UK. I know that once they pull the plug, your job is gone too, and that's how layoffs occur, especially within government entities. And I think it's very important to step back as a manager, as a leader, and think about your position is very important right now when it comes to resilience. Resilience is a word that we probably throw around too much, but do we really, really, really understand what it means? Resilience is not about being able to bounce back and say, okay, and keeping a positive, optimistic attitude. Resilience is all about your preparedness and self-awareness, how well you plan in advance, how well you strategize. We talk about a business continuity plan, but even thinking about events like this, the scale of this, how this can impact your operations and impact your staff. And are there ways that you can plan around it so that it reduces the impact on your stakeholders, on your partners, on your customers, on your employees? And how do you communicate that as well? Part of that is being the voice of reason for your team. They're looking to you as a leader. How are you reassuring them? How are you communicating in emergency? How you show yourself as a leader in a crisis is very critical to how not just your team will view you, but how the public will view you. Are you communicating regular updates? Even if the only update is there is no update. Are you communicating and being very transparent with your team, with your partners, with your stakeholders? This is very vital. And obviously, when we get out of this, it's all about thinking, okay, in the event this happens again next year, or next few years, something of this scale, which could drastically impact operations. We've seen this so many times. We've seen it with COVID, how it shut down entire industries, hospitality and tourism definitely being one of them, two of them. We've seen how just within a split second, without hardly any warning or notice, things can completely flip upside down like a ship. And so it's on us as leaders and managers to think not just about planning for regular risks and emergencies and those sorts of contingencies like a cybersecurity attack or, what if a fire destroys the office building. We need to think bigger. We need to think about resilience in times of national crisis. We need to think about resilience in times of international, global crisis. What do we have in place so that we are as robust as possible as we can be for our teams and for our clients and those who depend on us? Are we easily able to adapt and be flexible? Do we have backup options? For example, if you're a supplier, a federal supplier, do you have other clients besides working with a specific federal agency? You know what I'm saying? Think about backup options so that there's still cash flow, so that there's still operations can still keep going, business as usual as much as possible. These are sorts of things we need to think about. And resilience is one of those skills that was named one of the top 5 skills within the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, the core skills section. If you go there, it's one of the top 5 core skills, rising skills of 2025. In fact, it was listed as number 2, resilience and adaptability. And especially with AI, and then I'm going to segue into the next topic, which is part of this live, which is layoffs. Resilience is needed now more than ever. Not just resilience in the sense of having a positive, optimistic attitude, but active, practical steps that you're taking, strategizing to protect your team, not just looking out for yourself, but actually being there for your team. Now let's talk about layoffs. How do we address layoffs? I was part of a very interesting conversation today about layoffs and is it positive or negative? And everyone has varied viewpoints on this, and often most people find it to be a negative thing. Layoffs don't feel good, right? It doesn't always look good in an organization either. But at the same time, right now, we're seeing that layoffs are inevitable. Organizations are trying to trim down because of AI, because of things like Sora 2. You can imagine how certain jobs would potentially be axed over the next few years, especially for entry-level junior hires. If you're a junior-level video editor, I can't see that job lasting over the next few years. There are certain entry-level and junior roles that are vanishing. I had a conversation in my Work 2.0 podcast with Oliver Yonchev, who's an investor and co-founder who worked previously with Stephen Bartlett. And one thing he said is, from his standpoint in the marketing industry, AI is already taking entry-level jobs. And so we've got to think about segueing from resilience. We've got to think about when it comes to layoffs, as much as we don't like them, they're inevitable. It's a very difficult change process that has to happen, but it's inevitable because if you're going to be more efficient with AI, there are certain roles that just won't be needed. You're looking to cut costs, looking to be more efficient. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff already said it. 50% of the work, the tasks that are being done at Salesforce are already being automated. We have Amazon, Andy Jassy, CEO, said the same thing, that over the next few years, the turnover at Amazon is going to increase because of AI, while at the same time they're hiring for AI-focused roles. But a lot of things are changing. It's like the world is just flipping over because of AI. And eventually the dust will settle in a few years. That's what happens in an industrial revolution. There are jobs that are legacy jobs that people will hold on to until the day it goes. Those jobs will go and then new jobs will be created, right? And everyone will forget about those old jobs. But the point is, how do you navigate layoffs as a leader? And if you have to lay off, what guardrails, what should you have in place? And there are two things that come to mind. First thing is empathy, and the second thing is not just empathy, but also when it comes to actually not just laying off for laying off's sake, saying, okay, we're just going to be introducing AI. But like I said, in my conversation with Asana's CEO and the others, is actually figuring out, are we making a mistake here? Because there are some organizations who have rehired the people that they've laid off. You don't want to be one of those people. So you've got to think about specifically really taking your time with it, not rushing into it, and thinking about, if we do need to lay off because of efficiency, what are the specific areas where we are finding AI could be more efficient? And as opposed to just laying off, how can we upskill our current workers so that they can maybe transition from the roles that they're in, which are being eliminated, to roles where they're able to train AI or collaborate with AI? How can we create new positions for them, right? So having that strategy, that far-sightedness, where it's not just about you pleasing your shareholders and the money, it's all about developing your workforce as well, upskilling them, creating new roles for them, and seeing how they can transition into those roles. And if they're not happy to do so, then of course their role gets eliminated. For example, Accenture recently made headlines, as we know, laying off its employees, a sizable amount of its workforce. And the reason it said, which really stood out, and of course it made waves across LinkedIn, is that the reason this big consulting firm is laying off these employees is because they are not ready, essentially, for the age of AI. And so the message is very loud. Accenture is sending a really loud message to its partners, to its customers, to its own workforce, saying, hey, listen, if you're not going to get on board with this AI thing, we don't want you here. And I haven't been in Accenture's board meetings and the conversations they've had before they arrived at this decision to say whether or not that was the right move for them to take, whether or not they've invested heavily in, training and upskilling their employees before making that move. But it sounds like this is the way the world is heading right now. And I think that a lot of people are on the edge of their seat, very nervous and scared as to what they can expect. And I believe that as a leader, as a manager, leading servant leadership, leading with human first, people-centered leadership, leading with empathy, it's our job not just to focus on the bottom line. It's our job not just to focus on efficiency and productivity gains. It's our job to really think about, how can we lead people first, servant leadership? So as opposed to just cutting them out, really thinking about, is there any way that we can retain talent, because it costs more to rehire talent? Is there any way that we can retain talent? Any way that we can upskill them, train them, develop that growth mindset in them through a coaching leadership style? And then, and only then, if they still are resistant to change, then of course we let them go. I think that's the mentality that we should be having as leaders and as managers. Change, everyone hates change. No one likes change. There will be some people who will resist. That's just inevitable in any organization. But it's how you approach managing and leading change that really matters. It's how you approach preparing your teams for that change. Yes, that change is coming, but what are you doing to ensure that you're reducing the likelihood of a high turnover? And whereas there are roles that will no longer be needed, what are you doing to train and upskill them, provide them with pathways and career opportunities for new roles where they can upskill and develop themselves in AI? I think that's really important. So that's my takeaway from looking at the news, from looking at the release of Sora 2, looking at the federal government shutdown. Who knows how long that will last? I'm definitely praying that both sides will definitely come to some sort of consensus within the next few days, sooner rather than later, before the results become catastrophic. But in the meantime, definitely remember that this is a time that calls for empathy and resilience and communicating clearly. These are the soft skills, they call them, which are actually power skills that matter a whole lot more than knowing everything about agile and waterfall methodology, knowing all the technical stuff, knowing Kanban, knowing how to use project management, collaborative tools. You can learn all the technical stuff that you want, but you can know all the frameworks that you want. But if you don't have these power skills packed down, empathy, and communication, and resilience, and emotional intelligence, servant leadership, these are the things that will stand the test of time and enable not just yourself in your career as a leader, but you, your people, your organization to be resilient. So that regardless of what happens during these challenging times that are affecting us globally, positively and negatively, both you and your organization will emerge from this and even outshining competitors. I've seen it work for me as a manager, and I know it can work for you. All right, I will see you next time. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Monday and enjoy the rest of your